you awake?
Yes.
Are you awake? Come on. Are you awake? Thank you.
Alright. For those that are not awake, refreshments are outside with coffee. Cool. So today we're going to be having Brian here, our SVP of Marketing at A-LIGN, to shed some light on some of the executive buy-in that we needed in order to get our customer advocacy program off the ground. Okay, there we go. So how many of you guys have heard of A-LIGN before? Commonly pronounced A-LIGN. Correct term is A-LIGN. So not many of you. That's fine. So allow me to take a moment to tell you about who we are and a little bit about what we do. So we are the top issuer of SOC 2 reports in the world. And for those that don't know what a SOC 2 report is, it's basically when companies hire a third-party assessor or auditor like us to come in and review all their business processes to make sure all their doors and windows are locked, holding their customers' data safely and securely. We pride ourselves in being a one-stop shop for any company of any size in any industry for all their certifications, audits, and ultimately any other compliance assessment that they need. We have over 2,500 clients all over the globe, mostly in the SMB market, and primarily those in the tech industry, SaaS organizations that strive to keep their customers' data safe so that they can trust them with their information. We actually just announced a great partnership with one of the top 5 key firms in the world, Warburg Pincus. So I'm not going to lie, it has been really fun working at A-LIGN, and I'm super excited about what we have planned in 2022. But today, I'm not here to talk about why it's great to be at A-LIGN and how fun it has been. But I wanted to highlight that even though we had a customer base of over 2,500, we only had 4 case studies and 18 testimonials to show for it. And when you do the math, that equates to less than 1% of our customers talking about us, highlighting us, or even mentioning us on any of their marketing channels or any of their platforms. So knowing this, and knowing that in marketing, we constantly get asked from sales to create more testimonials, more quotes, more hero stories, case studies, to arm them in their sales calls. That's not new news, we hear that every day. So knowing that we constantly get these requests, we also noticed that our competitors were really leveraging their hero stories, testimonials, and quotes on their marketing channels. They're plastering it all over their website. And that made us really have a need, to identify a need for a program that could accelerate sales, tap into our customer base, and ultimately create leveraging content that was impactful for marketing to use. So the need for a customer advocacy program was born. So today I'm going to talk about the objectives that were needed in order to get our customer advocacy button and ultimately the steps that we took.
Sorry. Is it going?
Did not go.
Alright, cool. So the first objective was getting buy-in. So, of course, 2020, everyone learned a lot of things. A lot of things were unforeseen. But mostly it's that resource allocation is key. Every team, and I'm sure many of you guys can relate to this, resources are spread thin, razor thin. A good example would be less than a month ago, Southwest Airlines had to cancel more than 2,000 flights in one weekend, stranding their crew members, clients all over the globe. So knowing resource allocation being an issue across every industry, every team, including ours, we had to make a compelling buy-in reason and ultimately get Brian's buy-in to agree to a program, and finding a way to weave that into our existing 2021 content plan was key. And also prioritizing that with all of the other marketing campaigns and programs that we were running. So I went to Brian, I was like, Brian, we need a customer advocacy program, and these are the reasons why. And Brian's response was?
Well, so my response was interesting because, as Jeff mentioned, this has been a passion of mine for a long, long time. I ran a customer advocacy agency back in 2011, 2012, 2013, so this is really important to me. But I wear different hats now, to Jeff's point. Like, I now run an entire marketing team. I'm responsible for $100 million of pipeline, driving pipeline to score $100 million of sales, I should say. So that's a lot going on, and to the point of having short resources, we are putting everything we have into making sure that we're driving pipeline and meeting the needs of the business. So I really believe in content, in customer marketing. I really believe in the idea of an advocate program, and I look at it against everything that we're doing in marketing. At its core, a good advocate program, a good customer marketing program generates content. Like, the way I think about it as a CMO now is what we're doing with these stories and with these experiences is we're generating content that's used to feed programs that drives pipeline. It's easy for somebody to say, hey, how is that case study going to drive a lead? Usually a case study alone doesn't drive a lead, right? It drives a program. So for me, when Connie came to me, great idea, but we have to make sure we activate it and we use it in a way that drives programs. So in order to do that, I had to look at what are our objectives in marketing for the year. And Connie and I worked together on this with the rest of the team, and we realized, hey, one of our big objectives is reducing churn for first-year customers and upselling customers. So right there, we knew that there was a case to be made that this kind of content would be more compelling than other types of content we could produce in order to build up upsell value, to build up, to help our salespeople sell more. So that was kind of the base case of it. And that was kind of the rational case, but then there were two other more emotional cases that we made, which really helped. Right? The first one was appealing to sales reps. Sales reps know that they need different content and different pieces and different stages of the buyer's journey. So as we looked at our entire buying journey and we realized we had gaps in that buying journey and we could focus our salespeople on that. So then our salespeople said, yes, we need more of these case studies, and here's the reason why. Because we have pipeline in this stage, we're trying to move to that stage. So getting them on board helped me make the case. And then the third thing, as Connie mentioned, competitors. So we had some aggressive software competitors that were plastering my CEO's LinkedIn and Facebook with their customer stories, and all I had to do was draw his attention to how irritating that is. And between all those things together, it became a very compelling case that this is a type of content we can create that's more effective for specific goals than other types of content, and it'll let us allocate budget towards that and justify it. And with that, I set it as a big rock. So when we approach every quarter, we identify about 5 or 6 big rocks. These are big initiatives that we have to coordinate around. And so launching our customer marketing initiative became one of those big rocks in Q2.
And for me, I think the most personal piece to that was we were at SaaStr end of September.
Yeah.
We were on our way to dinner the last night, and on our way to dinner, we saw our competitors' billboards along the highway, and I was like, yes, I want to take them down. I'm ready for this. All right, so cool. Now we had Brian's buy-in. The next piece was shifting the mindset. So a lot of you guys heard about this yesterday and today about the whole reaching out to a customer, asking for their time, resources to write this long and hefty case study is a turnoff, right? This is the response that we get very often when you see on the right, thanks for reaching out, now's not the right time, I don't have the time to give you to do this. So knowing that that process was outdated and it lacked responsiveness, we wanted to flip the script. Flip the script in the sense of highlighting the customer as the hero of their journey, hence the hero story mindset. So making them and everybody else in the world aware of what they needed to build a case, the vendors that they evaluated, the challenges that they experienced throughout their journey to be audited, and ultimately achieving their audit or certification and feeling that pride that they took their company through this journey, and we as A-LIGN were merely partners of theirs in their journey. Making that mindset change, I felt like ultimately made the pressure for them to have to participate and dedicate time and resources was relieved. They didn't have to dedicate hours on end and go through like many revisions of this story. But ultimately, we took the feedback of the client. We wanted to take the approach of asking for their feedback, scheduling a brief 10-15 minute call, not even 30 minutes, right? Nobody has enough time for another hour-long Zoom call. And in that call, we would just ask them about what can we have done to make your audit experience better so that when you renew with us, you get a better experience next time. That was basically the entire call. And automatically, they love talking about their experience and what they are and who they are. So highlighting that and knowing that, we really, usually took more than 15 minutes, but allowing them to talk and setting up that, less pressure of it's only a 15-minute call really changed the game for us. And from an internal mindset, we made the shift to a hero story, right? So instead of creating content about how great A-LIGN is, why you should work with us, we're highlighting our customer's journey, our customer's story, and making that the core of the content that we create, really transpose into all of the marketing content to highlight the customer as the hero of the story.
Now, to everybody in this room, I'm sure a hero story sounds totally natural, and why would you do anything but that, right? But I'm sure you've also worked with sales teams who have said, give me my case study. I just need a case study. Why can't I just have a case study? So, to a champion, the idea of change and the idea of, pitching a new idea of this hero story, very natural, to the rest of the organization could be scary. And so part of this phase, from my perspective, was helping Connie lead the organization through why a hero story is better and why it's trustworthy, right? Why we're not risking something when, we could go out and generate a case study that doesn't do the job because it's not what customers want to hear. It's not what prospects want to hear. So for this, it's not that difficult to do. First thing we did was we got on the phone with Gartner, and they've done a ton of research on this, and they validated this approach, that this is an effective approach, and they gave us credible examples of other companies that have done this, and for some reason, when it comes from Gartner, it's a little more trusted by the organization. Second, we could look at folks in this room and in the broader community to provide their examples and stories and show the documents and show what it looks like and show how it's more compelling. And then third, because we did those two things, we were able to show, look, we're not reinventing the wheel here, right? This is something that people do. There's a playbook for it. We haven't done that playbook here, but it's fairly straightforward to do. We know how to do it. We've learned from other people. And that put kind of everybody at ease that, all right, we can see that this approach is a real approach, the benefits of the approach, and you guys have done your research, so we trust you to be able to do it.
Cool, so now that we had a shift in mindset, the next piece was drafting the strategy. So the first one on this checklist is very simple, target audience. We knew we wanted to talk to clients. Perfect, done. The next piece is gauging the timing, right? Knowing when to reach out. When was the right time to reach out? And were they happy with us at that moment in time? So for us, the perfect timing was after an audit and after they submitted a customer experience survey. That way the survey acted as a precursor to kind of give us an insight on what they were thinking about us, where we were with them in their minds at that point in time. The next piece is the method of outreach. So there's emails, there's calls. We pretty much took a email approach only because we found that to be the highest response rate, and also based on prior marketing campaigns, it gave us the best turnout. And finally, for our outreach cadence, it was a 3-pronged email strategy. The first one was, again, to thank them for their feedback and to allow for them to book a call with me directly, brief 10-15 minutes, to share their experience with us through their recent audit. The second email would be to follow up on that, and then the third email basically went out to them saying that, obviously you kind of didn't want to have a call with us, that's fine, but I left you with 3 questions, feel free to answer them if the call didn't work out. And from there, we would take their responses and convert them into testimonials. And of course, we would get approval afterwards, but that gave us a little bit more than just say, hey, they didn't respond to us, so we're just gonna leave it how it is. So once we had a strategy in place, the next piece was integration. Integration with our processes, our workflows, our internal teams, etc. And for us, that started at the marketing team. So once a client received the audit certification we then, as marketing and sales, get a notification email of their completed survey, and we review it, and we decide if there's somebody we want to reach out to. And if they do, we put them into a master list, and from there we choose 5 accounts every week to reach out to their account manager and ask them, hey, is this the right time to reach out? Should we reach out? And sometimes it's a yes, sometimes it's a no, sometimes it's a let's wait until after their contract gets renewed, or let's wait until after they've answered XYZ that they've been waiting for. And once we get the green light from the account manager, we then have the outreach email, and we record all of the outreaches in our CRM system, Salesforce. And what that does is it served as a bi-directional communication between our teams to say when we reached out, what we asked for, and these are the touch points that we had. That way the client at no point in time feels bombarded by sales and marketing emails constantly, and it keeps a clear track of where we are in the outreach stage. And I know this sounds like a lot of work on the sales team to have to document another thing or check on another thing for marketing, but this is the point where we get the sales team buy-in. And Brian can speak a little bit more on this in a second, but having them understand that the time and the effort that they're putting into building this program is actually building a resource library for them to use and to arm them in their next sales call. And that was a very important point to make it very visible for them to see, because as we all know, working with sales, it's really hard to get them to change and do something that doesn't align with their interests. So make sure that their interests are aligned with what you're doing as a customer advocacy program, trying to set it up.
Yeah, the other key part, I spend a lot of my time aligning with sales. And if you're in a marketing, or I'm not as close to customer success, but I imagine even a customer success organization, it's super important to align with sales. I think the most important part of aligning with sales when it comes to requests like this is demonstrating that that you respect what their process is and what their needs are, and that even if you don't fully understand it, or you might have some compelling case, there are certain boundaries where they are in the driver's seat, and you have to respect that. So, great example is be aware of the last day of the month, or the last couple of days of the month, right? Don't make a request of your sales team on, say, October 31st or October 30th, because they're trying to close their number. And it's much better to wait until, November 1st, 2nd, 3rd, when they're through that. Maybe if they made their number, great, they're going to be distracted for a couple days, they get back into the swing. They didn't make their number, they're going to have their mind on other things. But be aware of their cycles, be aware of the fact that they may have inside information about certain customers, where as a marketer you could look at it and say, hey, that's a really great target for us, and they may know a little more. And if you respect that, if you respect kind of the way they think and their emotions, what you're doing is you're building credibility with them, and they'll be a lot more responsive to when you do have a request that makes sense, and you're kind of recognizing that. Well, now you've got alignment. You start to kind of build a shared way of working with them, that you understand their world. To me, that's one of the most important parts of building sales alignment, is really understanding their world. And that way, when you go in with those requests, you've got that track record of being on the same page. With that, combined with knowing who the champions are. So, our new logo team, it's just a tool, a testimonial is a tool. They're generating new logos, they need it to fill some part of the sales process. Our renewals team, these were relationships that Connie was building with customers that served as another touch point that can provide value to your customer. And so the person who led that team was an internal champion and could speak more loudly across the team for how to best organize this. And through all that, we've got a super tight alignment across sales and marketing, not just on this front, but I was in a board meeting yesterday, and we talked, every comment about marketing contained a comment about sales, every comment about sales contained a comment about marketing, because we take that seriously all the way from the top.
So now that we had strategy, integration, the next piece was actually executing it. So, like I said, we would keep a track of all the projects that have been completed. The account manager then sends a customer experience survey, so CES survey for us. And from there, we would gauge on whether we wanted to reach out based on their feedback from the survey. gather a list of companies that we wanted to reach out to, and we would ask the account managers, hey, is this a good time to reach out? And for those that we got a green light on, we would send them email Cadence, and they would book a call with me directly. We would have the interview, have the recording, share that with a content person, which then drafts it into a hero story format. And then from there, we share it with the design team, which makes it all pretty. And we actually use heroes, like David mentioned, our prior speaker. And from there, once we had the design PDF, or the heroes guide, we would then loop the client back in and ask them for their buy-in and their feedback and their comments to make this piece even better, to shine them even more as the hero. So getting their buy-in at this point in time, this is probably the first time that they're seeing this hero story, which is fine, but having them involved in this process and this part really got, we got a great response from it, because we're not just simply asking for approval to distribute. We want them to be involved in the process. We want them to be a part of this creation process, so they're bought in automatically. And then from there, it made it all more easier to ask them for approval to put on our sales teams, to allow them to use it in our sales call, or to put on our website, and ultimately share it on our social media. So to kind of start with their involvement, kind of led the stepping stones for all the approval eventually to have it be a marketable piece of content on our website. Because all of us know a branded piece of hero story is a lot more impactful than a blinded one.
When it comes to customer buy-in, I think the charm of this through the entire cycle, it just matters so much. We're not asking them, like Connie described this at the beginning, we're not asking them for a case study at the beginning. We're asking that initial email Connie sends is, hey, looks like you had a great experience. Can you share more with me for 15 minutes? Because I want to hear about you, right? And then you write up that story and you send back, and hey, that was a great story. Like, don't be afraid to stroke their ego a little bit. I shared it with people. Everybody here loved it. Like, it was so insightful. And then you get a little farther, and people are asking for this. Can I turn it into something that's produced? Can I share it on the website? Can I send it around to other people? When you just kind of put the attention on them and not on us, we're all human, right? Like, we feel proud, and I think that's the key to the work that Connie's done on this program, was really making the customer feel like this was their resource that we were helping them build, showcasing their own brand and their own accomplishments, as opposed to a case study for the vendor or an endorsement of the vendor.
So this slide contains some of the examples of the interactive hero stories that we've created. On the left, we have Premier 1 earning their SOC 2 report, and on the right, we have Pluto Ship earning their SOC 2 report and also their ISO 27001 certification.
These, of course, are in our old brand. You can see our old logo there. Old is still on the website. Our new logo will be on the website with a whole new brand in a couple weeks from now. And so yeah, that's why the logos are different. But we're super excited about that.
So just to do a little time-lapse recap. So the beginning of January 2021, we had 4 case studies and 18 testimonials.
And no Connie.
Yeah, that's you. I joined mid-January, yes. The end of May, we officially launched our program. And that same week, at the end of that week, we had our first customer experience call. And then as of last week, we have 33 hero stories in the works and 68 testimonials. Yeah, so in that short amount of time, we were able to grow our vault, as Allison said, this beautiful vault. But there were some challenges. So I've actually have a slide after this about the takeaways and a little bit about what we learned in this entire process and how we got such a good, impactful turnaround in a short amount of time.
Now, we can all clap for these results, and I'm thrilled. Like, if I haven't said it enough, I'm thrilled with these results. When I show them to my CEO, what he says is, okay, well, what kind of demand do they create? And he says it mockingly because he does understand, but at the same time, there's a lot of truth to the statement, and it's a reminder that this is an activity metric, not an impact metric, right? And so October 20th, we've got 33 hero stories in the works. We've got 68 testimonials. Aside from that, now I've got my CMO hat on. How do we leverage this, right? The worst thing in any content play is when you create a piece of content, you send it out in one email, and it never gets. How many times does that happen, right? All the time. And the same thing is true with this content. So if you're going to hire somebody to run this program and put the resources and the effort behind it, super important to make sure that the follow-through is there. You're not just generating content, but you're thinking about the distribution of the content. So in this case, how are we modifying our advertising programs to incorporate these testimonials? Who are we targeting with those specific advertising programs? We're building a brand new website, as I just mentioned. How are we leveraging this content on the website, and what is the flow through of that so we can direct people from that content to a page where they're going to ultimately take an action. I talked about advertising, I talked about website, webinars and events. Thankfully, looks like events are coming back in 2022. How do we turn some of these people into speakers for us, both in person as well as on webcasts, on panels? If we launch a podcast, which is something we're talking about, now we've got a base of people to go back into. So it's super important for me and for the rest of the team, and really for Connie to be pushing this, because a bunch of activities doesn't matter if those activities don't really get leveraged. So from her position pushing it, and from my position justifying it, making sure that we're identifying the channels where that content gets pushed out, and those are programs, and those programs can be measured in traditional marketing ways, right? How much pipeline is being generated, how much pipeline is being influenced, which is a different kind of metric, and you know, can you point to specific case studies? Sorry, not case studies in that sense, but specific cases where this content played a pivotal role in closing business or some kind of an opportunity shift. The other piece of data that's really good to pull out of this is qualitative. So a customer said, I heard that other customer talk about you, and that's why I'm here, right? And so when you can get those kinds of qualitative stories, it just backs up and really draws into focus the power of that human connection that happens between customers, and executives love that. You know, it's really important to see that, hey, the customers themselves know the value of this, and they're able to put it into words.
So before we wrap up for today, I wanted to leave everyone with some takeaways about some things we've learned, some things we've noticed to be very key important pieces if you were to create a customer advocacy program like this one. The first piece is timing. Brian touched on this very much about knowing when to reach out to sales, right? Not at the end of the month, probably not at the end of the quarter. And to know that, is it okay to reach out to the client? Is it the right timing to reach out to the client? Aligning that with our account managers. Every outreach we had, we checked with the account manager prior. We didn't want to reach out to the client at the wrong time and leave a bad impression, making it seem like our teams were not communicating or that we're unprofessional. So knowing the timing, really maximizing on that, because as marketing, we have one opportunity to reach out to the client. We don't want to mess that up. The second thing here is sales buy-in. So again, getting them involved, showing them the value of this program and the work that they're putting in has a direct impact on how they're going to be more successful in their roles and achieving their quotas. Sales buy-in. I mean, basically, it's not possible to have a program like this without the sales team's involvement, because at the end of the day, they own the relationship with the client, right? We're basically optimizing that or amplifying that as marketing. And the third thing here is actually something we're currently working on, and it's basically having a tool that can scale with you to track a program like this. We started in our marketing project management tool, Asana, and we've outgrown it to the point where there's no way you can really see 33 hero stories, where they are in production, where they are in outreach, and where they are in the actual approval to distribute. So having a tool that can scale with you, that can really allow you to get a bird's eye view of everything is very important. And the next item here is a communication plan. This is something we didn't really plan for, but we ultimately had. And it's basically what happens after you have the interview and recording, and you need to share with the to get that call and to like have that interview, that's all we thought of too. So having a communication plan earlier than later to have all the stakeholders involved, whether it's sales or marketing, and to discuss, what is a realistic timeline? What are you committing to? How many can you produce as a team on a monthly basis or even on a quarterly basis? And knowing what is a realistic lead time for each step in between. And knowing that if there's a delay or other things come up, is it okay to push this back? How high this program is on the priority list, again, is another important piece. So having a communication plan meeting earlier on is definitely better. And lastly, content resources. Who's going to be writing the 30 hero stories that we have in backlogs? Our content person is amazing. She's awesome, but she's overloaded, right? Again, we had to merge this into our existing 2021 content plan. So she's working on these hero stories and also all of the other content that we designed to produce this year. So definitely think about content resources in the sense of who's going to be writing, if it's going to be you, if you're going to be outsourcing it, all of that's fine. But to think about that earlier on.
And from my perspective as an executive, I think the takeaway is it's not just me, it's not just your executive that you have to convince about this. There is a learning curve for the organization. And so once we got aligned, and once we believe in this program together, my job becomes helping to bring the rest of the organization along, helping to educate them on what it means, what success even looks like, right? Shifting the mindset at the executive level from, hey, what did we get from all those stories, to how are those stories powering, some of our most productive demand generation programs. That's something that I have to do. So knowing that that's the language that we need to communicate in, and that my job is to in some ways play defense, to give Connie the room she needs to run with the program, but also to play offense with moving the rest of the organization, sometimes slowly, through this process, and that's okay. Let it take the time so it really sinks in. I think that's the biggest takeaway from my perspective. Is my job is an educational one with the rest of the executives, the rest of the sales team, and really just to provide support on how we're getting from where we were to where we're going.
So thank you for everyone's time and attention, and I hope the discussion was valuable and useful. I've left Brian and I's contact information on the screen if anybody would like to connect afterwards. And now I would like to open it up for Q&A.
So it sounds like you were fortunate in that Brian was already an advocate of an advocacy program. Say you wanted to do this again with someone who you had to convince a little more. How would you do that?
That's a good question. I am very fortunate to be working with Brian and to have him already bought into the process. I would say if I were to do this again with someone, a boss that didn't really have familiarity in the value, I would say a little bit about what Brian said. First of all, show them the importance and the value in this program, right? Show them that this can accelerate sales and have numbers from maybe, peers. For example, people in this room, they've ran successful programs. So what are some of the numbers that they were able to get out of it, the ROI in a program like this? And then I would say, so that's the logical point, right? But then also get a little bit personal. Show them the ads that they keep getting or that you keep getting on LinkedIn about your competitors doing this and that with their customers and having these customer conferences. So the logical piece would be to show them the numbers and the impacts of other programs, but then the personal piece is like get under their skin a little bit, showing them that our competitors are doing this, why are we not? Yeah.
And to add to that, I still have that job up to somebody who might not, and so aligning with a key goal, a corporate or a marketing or really a revenue or pipeline goal, that's the ultimate thing. And so if you frame this as, I want to build a customer program because it's the right thing to do, right? I want to build this because it's the best way for us to achieve this specific goal that you've laid out for us, and with my heart, I believe that, and there's some data to back it up. That's the most compelling way to make that case.
Any other questions?
really templatized? What's your approach? Do you mean the logistics of the program or the logistics of the story writing? The story writing. Story writing. So like I said, our content person's amazing, but we did have to go through a couple of, versions of the first hero story that we created. It was so automatic, like, reflex to just write about the challenge, the impact, and the results. So that was our first draft. So then we took that draft and really converted it, ripped it apart, and was like, this is not a hero story. This is a case study, and this is all it's ever going to be. So let's rewrite it and highlight the hero from the beginning, right? Who they are, what they're about, what were their struggles. Have them, as a client, their story be the focus of that. So it did take a couple of revisions, but ultimately we got it down to what was their challenge? How was them finding a vendor so difficult? Where did their list of possible vendors come up from? To, okay, so now that they have a vendor, what was that project like for them? I mean, as many of you know, an audit is very time consuming, it's very stressful. So having them say that is fine, right? Everybody knows that that's how an audit is. But then talk about what they did to overcome that, or what about the product, so our product is Ascend. What about Ascend helped them in that journey? And ultimately, the success of them finding new business or gaining the trust of their partners and clients with their audit interpretation, kind of outlining in that way, kind of is the format that we took with the hero approach in the success stories.
So I have a question, and I feel like I have a very similar path to where you guys have been, same size company, same launching this customer voice piece and really going after asking people, what's their story and how, what's in it for them, and I'm taking that side of it. One thing that I've realized, in addition to the fact that we can't just create content, we actually have to figure out where it's going and how we're getting into the hands of people, same kind of exact place, is some of the stories that I create by talking to these customers are kind of vanilla. Like they're nice, they're not, but are they actually talking about things that are really going to drive impact in the sales process? And so one of the things that I've been thinking about, which I'd love to know if you've been thinking about this, is how do we make sure that we're asking the right questions, the right insights around the right areas that are going to really impact? So I just would love to hear how you've been dealing with that.
That's a great question. Yes, there has been conversations where it's a little dry, and maybe their story has already been spoken for by another client. I get that. And I would say, so I go into each of these interviews with a set list of questions, but I basically never follow the questions, right? It's very much kind of gauging the tone, reading the room, right? Of course now we do it through Zoom, but so I'll have an initial question, what was your experience like? What were some of the struggles you had, right? And then from there, you'll hear them respond with a specific piece that they were passionate about, or a specific piece that they struggled with tremendously. So then diving deeper into that, kind of focusing on that, pinching that nerve, make them express a little bit more, because then that will be what makes their story unique, instead of following the questions of okay, what was your ROI, what was your challenge, how did you convince your team to get ISO certification? That's very generalized, but when you speak to them and ask them an open-ended question, they'll give you a little bit, right? And then from there you take that little bit and you pinch that nerve a little bit more and kind of dig into deeper about what they struggled with and what they're passionate about. And I think taking that approach and going into that interview, you're not thinking about what can they say to make this a great hero story, right? That's not the mindset I take. The mindset I take is what do they want to tell me about? I'm here to listen to them. I'm here to share their feedback and their experience with our internal teams, to write these stories. So really pinching their nerve and grasping that, and reading the room, I think was what I found success in.
Last question coming in here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't see any hands. I will yield to the floor if anybody else has a question, but I did want to ask, you talked about the mindset shift required to get people away from the classic case study to think about the hero story, and that you had some ammunition from Gartner and things like that. But what did those conversations sound like when you were trying to make that mindset shift? Like, how did you break through? Because I often have a hard time doing that.
Internally or like?
Yeah, internally with other executives, because we talked this morning about how everybody, there's no end for requests for more case studies.
Yeah. You know, I think we're fortunate to work at a very human company. So part of it is we are a professional services company. We have a lot of IP, but that IP is only made possible by the 200 auditors or 200 plus auditors that we have. So in a lot of ways, like there's a very human part of our culture at A-LIGN. We have corporate values. We really live these corporate values, and you know they're very human values, like do the right thing always, and be all in, and so there's an element of, I think, humanity that is inherent in the DNA of A-LIGN that we could appeal to, and so you know our founder and CEO, who's built this company over the past 12 years from nothing. You know, he always talks about, one of our differentiators is we partner with our customers. Other auditors will come in with a checklist and say, check, 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 you guys are horrible. We partner with them to make them successful. And so there is kind of this idea inherent in our DNA that we're along for the ride, you know, helping our customer through whatever journey that they're on. So I think part of it was kind of like that natural affinity. I think there's probably some of that in every company. Maybe not every company, but there's always, you know, it almost goes back to what Connie was saying around, you know, find that strand of, you know, of passion that the customer has and follow that, and that's where the hero story will come from. If I kind of project the experience that Connie has gone through and that we've gone through to other companies that maybe are more classic, I would follow that same advice, which is, you know, find the piece of passion to their customers, like to a company's customers, and then follow that and use that as kind of the basis for the program. That might not work all the time, obviously. And I'm sure you've had tons of experience where it hasn't. So, but it was the human thing at A-LIGN that allowed us to, I think, make that shift and get people there.
We got one more. Yeah, we have time. You can ask it, Charlie.
A few slides ago, you showed an example of a hero story. Is that the full length of it? Are they that small? That short?
Yeah, that wasn't the full length of it. That was what I could fit on a screenshot. No, but it is a one-page view. So it's an interactive piece that has clickable. So that was something that you also could see through the example, is that the piece it's not a PDF, it's a Ceros guide, so they can scroll through it and you can click out to each of the little call outs. I would say, like, if it was in page style, it'd be like 1 to 2 pages, but again, nothing lengthy, nothing heavy. We had spacing throughout. It wasn't just like straight up walls and walls of text.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Connie, and thank you, Brian. Great job. Thank you.